Good morning, everyone. I hope we all had a good time in our barbecues yesterday and that there was an opportunity to at least engage with some different people, which opens up an opportunity to perhaps invite them over to other things later. It was good. We had a good time and met a couple of people, and there's an opportunity that we can try and put them in a scenario where they can find common interests and open up more conversations. So it's good. I'll start my timer. All right, we're going to start in Proverbs chapter 6. And the title of my talk today is Innocent Blood. All right, so in Proverbs chapter 6 and in verse 16, we read here, "These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him, a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren." These are all things that God hates. If you want to know what God hates, these are the things. And the 7th is an abomination, which is sowing discord among the brethren. It's all behaviour towards destruction, things that affect other people, things that are driven by selfish motives. And what I actually wanted to do today is overlay these 7 things against the behaviours that were portrayed in Jesus' trial and crucifixion. And we see that these things that God hates were the motives behind the way that Jesus was trialed. We're just going to go over to Isaiah 53, which is an incredible chapter that prophesies so many of the things that occurred during Jesus' crucifixion, and highlight that the plan of God was set in motion right at the beginning. In fact, God declares it in the garden when he passes judgment on the devil. And here we read, we'll just read a few verses. In verse 3 it says, "He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised and we esteemed him not." When we were talking a little bit about this passage in Bible class a few weeks ago, and some of the things that we actually get out of this, the fact that this man who brought so much life to people, healing, miracles, provision, guidance, and hope, the people in the end, they rejected him. They despised him. They didn't want to have anything to do with him, and they placed him among those that are also despised. You know, he was acquainted with grief. He was familiar with pain, with sorrow, with the heartache that people go through when they are put through this process of a trial and crucifixion. And we hid from him. The people at the time, you know, the prophecy is talking about the people at the time, but as his sacrifice is applied to all from that point onwards, we also find ourselves applying ourselves to those that look upon him and how we considered him. And I want to bring that out a little bit later, that where we stood at one point in our life in our perception of who Jesus was. It says that we esteemed him not. He wasn't given a fancy trial. He wasn't given, a ceremonial sacrificial death. He was killed like a common criminal. It wasn't this big ceremony where they chanted and they sang and, they did it in this, honourable way. He was considered a criminal. He was tried and treated as one and killed as someone who is not esteemed, someone who is hated, who is despised and rejected. And they say, we don't want anything to do with him, just get rid of him. Verse 7, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he openeth not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. He was oppressed. He was, he was, the power at the time was put upon him, that he was dragged from here to there. He was placed in this place. He was treated badly here, yet he didn't say anything. If it was a common criminal, they would be yelling, they would be cursing, they would be denying things, they would be saying, you've got the wrong person, I didn't do it. But he didn't do any of that. He just humbly submitted himself and he said nothing until he was required to. They would say, defend yourself. What have you got to say? What do you say to these things that people are saying about you? And he just kept his silence. Verse 8, he was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. So he was put under this method of torture and pain and suffering for our transgressions, for the things that we had done wrong. And he was killed, he was cut off from the land of the living. Verse 9, and he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. He didn't fight back. When they grabbed him, he didn't punch and kick and try and break away and run away. He submitted himself willingly. He didn't lie. There was no deceit. When they said, did you do this? He never denied anything. He always told the truth. It was a marked difference to the way that people would normally react in these circumstances. And his grave was made with the wicked. He was killed with the malefactors. He was killed with the thieves, the robbers, the murderers. He was killed with the wicked, and he was buried. His grave was buried with the rich. And we read about that later in Joseph of Arimathea, his tomb. Verse 10, yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see of the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he has poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. It's pretty clear that God saw this as a favourable outcome. That he was pleased, not that he was happy to see his son suffer, but that he was happy to see what it resulted in. That the transgressions of many were laid upon the innocent blood of his son, and through that death paid the price for all. So that through it, his days would be prolonged, that he died mortal and rose immortal, that his days would go on forever, and he would impart that to others, to us, so that we could be the beneficiaries of his sacrifice, that our sins and our iniquities, our transgressions would be satisfied through Jesus' death, and that we would then inherit the strong. We would inherit the spoil. We would inherit the portion of the great, and it cost us nothing. I guess I really want to bring out that we have an opportunity to appreciate more of what Jesus actually did for us. So we'll get into that in John 16. I'm not really going to go through the pain or the suffering or the actual death itself. I just want to really highlight the way that Jesus conducted himself and the way that the Pharisees conducted themselves through this time. But we see here in John 16, I've done it again, I've put the wrong one. John 15, verse 22. We know that Jesus was well aware of what was going to happen to him. In fact, he prophesied it many times. He told the people exactly how he was going to die. But this is the reason why. This is one of the reasons why. John 15, verse 22. If I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin, but now they have no cloak for their sin. He that hateth me hateth my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which none other man did, they had not had sin. But now have they both seen and hated both me and my Father. But this cometh to pass, that the word might be fulfilled that is written in their law. They hated me without a cause. But when the Comforter is come, whom I will send unto you from the Father, even the Spirit of truth which proceedeth from the Father, he shall testify of me, and you shall also bear witness, because you have been with me from the beginning. I just want to pick out a few things out of this, is that Jesus said, they will hate me without a cause. So I haven't done anything to them that justifies their hatred. I didn't enroll them in a pyramid scheme or something like that they found out about later, or deceive them or take money from them and spend. The cause that they would hate me is not justified. And the cause is this, that they hated good. They hated light. They hated someone pointing out that they were doing the wrong thing. Because what he talks about is that if I hadn't come and told them that they were doing the wrong thing, then they would have been able to hide behind it. The cloak, the covering, the excuse, the self-justification to go, it's all right, I'm doing what I think is right. But Jesus came and pointed out to them that they weren't. And they hated that. They didn't want to know that they were doing the wrong thing. They wanted to be blind. They wanted to be willfully ignorant. But Jesus came and pointed out, you're doing the wrong thing. And the reason why you know it is because I'm doing stuff that you've never seen before, which proves that I am from God. And they said that. They acknowledged that they've never seen these things before, which meant that he had the weight of the power of God, proving that what he said was true. And that's why they hated him. Because he would open their eyes and cut to the heart and point out and say, this is where you've got it wrong. And it wasn't just some street philosopher who was waffling on. This is a man who came and changed reality, who healed people, who performed miracles that they had never seen before. So they knew he had the backing of God. And so what he said was true. And so because that was revealed to them, they hated him and they hated the Father. And that was the cause that they took upon themselves, that they didn't like being pointed out that they were wrong. But Jesus promises here that when the Comforter is come, that is the Spirit of truth, he will testify of me. And that's what we read about, that's what we know about, that when you acknowledge the wrong that is pointed out in your life and you accept the next step, when you receive the Holy Spirit, and we see this exemplified in Saul when he was converted, that all of a sudden he knew. All of a sudden it was revealed to him who Jesus really was, that what he was fighting against, what he hated, was wrong. And it was revealed, and the Spirit gives him that understanding. It gives us that understanding where all of a sudden our eyes are open and we understand that this is the truth and this is what we need to follow. We'll go over to chapter 11. So we're going to switch over to the Pharisees and the beginning of their reasoning for why they did these things. So we've got Jesus telling us this is why they're doing those things, and then we have the Pharisees saying this is why they are choosing this course of action. In John 11 verse 47, then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, what do we, for this man doeth many miracles? You think, wouldn't you just let him continue? What are we going to do? This man is doing a lot of miracles. This man is bringing the power of God into our nation. We have to stop it. Why? Because in verse 48, if we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. They were worried that people would continue to receive the benefit of God working in their nation. And there was this divide where there's a group of people, the Zealots. One of the apostles was from them, where they went, let's tear down the Romans, let's get rid of this oppression, let's kick them out. But the Pharisees had made a union with the Romans. They would work with them as much as they could. They didn't like it, but they went, we know how to work the system. And we know that if this man stirs up the people and they decide to make him a king, it will be a revolution. It will be a revolt, and the Romans will come and crush it. And in doing so, they'll take away our power. And that's what they were motivated by. They didn't want to lose their power and authority. You would think that seeing the power of God come back into Israel, that they would be welcoming it. They would go, nothing can stop us now. Let's follow this man. Let's let him take control. But their pride and their arrogance was the motivation behind doing what they did. And that's what Jesus is talking about. They hated me without a cause. What was their cause? He's doing good things. He's doing miracles. That has to stop. What a terrible cause. Verse 49, and one of them named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Then from that day forth they took counsel together for to put him to death. God put those words in his mouth. He said things that he was not inspired by, because he didn't get any inspiration out of it. The Lord said, I'm going to make you say this because this is part of a greater plan. In his mind, Caiaphas said, if this man dies, then our nation will live, because it will stop the Romans. But what he did not have any understanding or appreciation of is that God was saying, by this man dying, many will live through what he will achieve and the power that will be able to come into the world. And so from that day forth, they put a plan together of how they were going to put him to death. And so here we start to see the things that God hates. A proud look. Looking upon this man and going, we are better than him. We want what's best for us. He's doing good things, but we don't like that. We want to keep our authority. That's their proud look. There's no humility there, going, here's the power of God, I want to submit to it. It's going, I don't like that. I think we can do better. A heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. Let's kill the miracle man. Let's kill the power of God that is evident in our nation today. That's what their heart devised. Let's put a stop to good. And feet swift in running to mischief. Let's get onto it now. We've got to put a plan in action. Let's plan together. Not let's wait and see how it pans out. Maybe he'll go somewhere else or maybe he'll stop. We've got to get onto this straight away. Swift to mischief. We'll jump over to Matthew chapter 26. We are going to be switching between a few of the Gospels just because I want to try and bring out a bit more in each section. Matthew 26 and verse 14. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests and said unto them, What will you give me, and I will deliver him unto you? And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. It's all working out for them. Now all of a sudden there's one on the inside that's approached the Pharisees and said, hey, I can betray him. I can help you out. What are you going to give me? And they go, we'll give you 30 pieces of silver. So all of a sudden the opportunity was coming along, all according to their plan. They were going to get it done. Or so they thought. We'll jump down to verse 48. So here's where it happens. Now he that betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they and laid hands on Jesus and took him. So here it starts to happen. Judas sees an opportunity to betray Jesus, to point him out to the authorities. And the authorities, they grab him. And what does Jesus do? He humbly submits. He doesn't try and break free. He doesn't disappear. He doesn't walk away untouched, which he has done in the past. But all of a sudden, he's letting things progress. And we have the instant where Peter cuts off the servant's ear. John dobs him in his gospel. All the others are like, one of the disciples, and John's like, yeah, it was Peter. He did it. And Jesus, he heals the man's ear. Chopped off, Jesus puts it back on, healed. Another miracle in amongst being captured and being taken away to be killed unjustly. In verse 53, he says, Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then shall the scripture be fulfilled, that thus it must be? In that same hour said Jesus to the multitudes, Are you come out against a thief with swords and staves for to take me? I sat daily with you teaching in the temple, and you laid no hold on me. But all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. He's even telling the people that have captured him, do you realize what's going on here? You had ample opportunity. You didn't need Judas to point me out. You know who I am. You know what I look like. I sat daily in the temple. You had every opportunity to come and arrest me, but you do it here at night. You do it here under the cloak of darkness where no one else can see. No one else can defend the man that is bringing life into this nation. You do it in darkness. And he says, do you not realize that I have the power of my Father behind me? I could call 12 legions of angels to free me, to deliver me, to destroy you. But the scriptures must be fulfilled. And Jesus here starts to tell them, and they never really understood this is going to happen. And what I want to highlight as we go through is that there's many people who tried for it to not happen. But Jesus knew that this was the way, and he allowed it to happen. And the way that he presented and conducted himself was always an example to us. For starters, Peter tries to stop them. He chops off their ear. I mean, he was terrible with the sword. He was a fisherman. He didn't know how to swing that thing. But he tried. He could have easily been killed by the guards that were with him. He tried to stop it. And then when Jesus said, this is what's going to happen, they forsook him and they ran away. Verse 59. Now the chief priests and elders and all the council sought false witness against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At the last came 2 false witnesses. So what starts to happen is the Pharisees have got him. They take him to their place, their courts, where they're going to trial him. And they start to bring out the case against Jesus. The problem is that all the witnesses that they had got together were false witnesses, and none of them could agree on the story. None of them could agree on why they were what Jesus had said and what he had done, because none of it was true. And in fact, if you read over in Mark chapter 14, verse 55 to 59, it talks about that none of them could agree. The way that they tried to bring their false accusations, none of them matched up. So they actually didn't have a case. Under their own law, they brought these false witnesses. And what does God hate? A false witness that speaks lies. God hates it because it perverts judgment. It perverts an honest trial of something that's gone wrong. They couldn't agree on their own lies. And so they had two that came along, and this is what they said, verse 61. This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said unto him, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? What have you got to say for yourself? How do you plead? This is what they've accused you of. That you said that you're going to destroy our temple. That's blasphemy. That's destruction, and then somehow you're going to build it again. But Jesus held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus saith unto him, Thou hast said, Nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He has spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now you have heard his blasphemy. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. Now Jesus held his peace. He said nothing. He was like a lamb to the slaughter, and he would have got away with it, except the high priest invoked the law of God. He said, I adjure thee. And what that means is it's to force an oath, to demand the truth. It refers back to Leviticus chapter 5, verse 1, where it basically says, if you know something and you don't tell it, the iniquity is on you. And so what they did here is they said, I force an oath on you that if you are telling us that you are the Son of God, you have to declare it. And what did Jesus do? He fulfilled the law. He knew that if he said nothing, then the iniquity of knowing the truth and not saying it would be on him. And that wasn't how this was meant to go. Now, it's not that he was trying to get away with it, because he knew that this was going to unfold this way. But what he does again is that he shows an upright and righteous way of handling God's law while these people are perverting and corrupting it. And in doing so, he gives them the confession that he's saying that he is the Son of God, and they say, that's blasphemy. The irony of it was that it wasn't blasphemy because he was the Son of God. But once again, their motives were not pure. The reason why they were doing this is because they wanted to hold on to power and they wanted to get rid of Jesus. All right, let's keep going. Chapter 27 and verse 1. When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. They had his confession that he was saying that he was the Son of God, that was blasphemy, and under their law that was worthy of death. But they weren't allowed to kill him, so they had to convince the Romans. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Then Judas, which had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? See thou to that. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. Now we don't know Judas's plan. We do know that he was tempted by money. And that's what the devil used as an opportunity, that he was greedy for money. And he went, I can get some money from these people if I betray them. We don't know, but it's possible that he thought that Jesus was just going to escape and that he was going to make 30 pieces of silver out of this and they're all just going to get on with things. Because it says that when he saw that he was condemned, when he saw that his involvement of the plan meant that it went further than he anticipated, that Jesus was now condemned and he was going to be killed, he repented. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to make a quick 30 pieces of silver and we all just disappear and move on with our lives. We don't know his motivations, but what we do know is that he acknowledged that Jesus was innocent. He said, I have betrayed the innocent blood. And what do the Pharisees say? That's not our problem. We got what we wanted. You deal with that. You deal with your conscience. Our conscience is corruptly clear. We're getting what we want and we don't care. What does God hate? Hands that shed innocent blood. They knew he was innocent, but they didn't care. They were going to get what they wanted. Luke chapter 23. Luke 23 and verse 1 it reads, "And the whole multitude of them arose and led him unto Pilate." So there's a big mob of them, and they take him to Pontius Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ a king." So this is the twist that they put on it for the Romans. So under their law, they've gone, it's blasphemy. He says he's the Son of God, so he should die. But the Romans needed a reason. So they told Pontius Pilate, he's been perverting the nation. He's causing unrest. He's stirring up the people and saying that he's a king. And also, he's telling people not to pay their taxes. Now, that's a lie. Because we know that in Matthew 22, verse 21, that Jesus said to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God. And he never forbid them to pay taxes. The Pharisees lied. And what does God hate? A lying tongue. And he didn't proclaim himself king. If we had time, we would read in John 6, verse 15, that Jesus, he's teaching and preaching and performing miracles, and when he perceived that they would try to take him by force to make him a king, he departed into the wilderness, or into a mountain, I forget. But he recognized that the way things were moving is that the people saw the power and the authority, and they went, let's make him a king. And he said, that's not what this is about. So he never said, yep, let's do it, I'll be your king, we're going to overthrow the Romans and all that sort of stuff. But that's the twist that they gave Pontius Pilate to try and convince him. In verse 3 to 13, I won't read it just so that we can get through everything. Pilate asks him, is that true? Are you the king of the Jews? And he says, thou sayest it. It's as you say. But then Pilate, he says, I don't find any fault in this man. And we're going to see this repeated quite often. And, you know, they said, yeah, but he's stirring up the people. He's been teaching from Galilee through to here. And he went, this guy's from Galilee. Not in my jurisdiction. And he hands him over to Herod. He goes, oh, Herod can try him. And Herod's really excited because he's exceedingly glad and desirous to see him. We read in verse 8. He's like, I've heard so much about you. I want to see a miracle. I want to see the miracle man that everyone's been talking about. He was disappointed by the lack of entertainment. He asked Jesus lots and lots of things, and Jesus said nothing. He held his peace. He said, I'm not here to put on a show for you. I'm here to go through what this is all about. And at the same time, the chief priests are, accusing him and vehemently saying, this is what he's done and all that sort of stuff. And Herod just said, I'm not getting anywhere with this. And he gave in to his men who mocked him and did all these horrible things to him. And he sent him back to Pilate. And as a result, Pilate and Herod became friends as a result of this interaction. But we'll just... We'll jump over to, if you want to keep your hand in Luke, we'll just jump over to John 18. I just want to pick up where Pilate is talking more with Jesus and trying to get more information from him. So just before everything that happened with Herod, in John 18 and verse 28, then led they Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment, and it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out unto them and said, what accusation bring ye against this man? They answered and said unto him, if he were not a malefactor, we would not have delivered him up unto thee. Then said Pilate unto them, Take ye him and judge him according to your law. The Jews therefore said unto him, It is not lawful for us to put any man to death, that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying what death he should die. So what actually have happened here is you can see the utter hypocrisy of the Pharisees, who have committed a false trial. They've accused an innocent man. They've told lies about what he's doing. Yet they said, we're not going to step into the judgment hall because that's a Roman place, and if we do that, we'll be ceremonially impure for the Passover. What hypocrisy! That they're trying to convince themselves that they are justified in their actions while perverting the law of God. And Pilate says, well, you judge him. And they said, he's worthy of death, but we're not allowed to put him to death. And here we have the reason why it's unfolding this way. Because Jesus prophesied that he would be crucified. And that's how he would die. Because if the Jews were allowed to kill him, because the only reason they weren't allowed to kill him was because of the Roman occupation, he would have been stoned to death. That's the way that they did things. But because of the Roman occupation, he would be crucified. And the reason for the crucifixion is because there's so much symbology that is all the way through the Old Testament signifying the way that he would die and the things that it would do and what it represented and how it would come to pass. We'll just read in. Yeah, I've got time for that one. We'll go to just in chapter 19. So from verse 6, the chief priests are saying they want to crucify him. He says, I find no fault. We've got a law that he should die, that he made himself the Son of God. And when Pilate heard that, he was more afraid, and he went into the judgment hall and said unto Jesus, Where are you from? Whence art thou from? But Jesus gave him no answer. In verse 10, Then said Pilate unto him, Speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee, and have power to release thee? Jesus answered, Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore he that delivered me unto thee has the greater sin. From thenceforth Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever make himself a king speaketh against Caesar. So even Pilate is like, don't you know that I'm the one that's in control? And Jesus said, you've got no control here. This is going to happen whether you like it or not. The only power that you would be given is if my Father was going to give you that power. But you don't understand that as much as you don't want this to happen, it's going to happen. And the Pharisees come and say to him, you're not Caesar's friend. If you don't kill him, you're not Caesar's friend, because he's saying he's making himself a king of the Jews, and Caesar's our only king, is what they said. They put more pressure on him, and Pilate would probably understood, starting to see the picture, this is getting out of hand. This is a just and righteous man who has no fault that I find in him, and I want to release him. And Jesus says, you are not going to make that happen. You are powerless to stop this, because it was prophesied, and what it will achieve is greater than you. All right. I need to keep moving. I was going to read in in John 18, verse 33 through to 40, he has a further conversation with Pilate, and we have the fact that he's saying, are you really a king? And Jesus tries to tell him, for this cause I was brought into this world. That's what I'm here for, but you don't understand. My kingdom is not of this world. The kingdom that I'm going to be bringing about is beyond what you see, and I will be the king of truth. That everyone that I bear witness unto the truth, the ones that they hear my voice, they will understand the truth. And Pilate gives us that classic line, what is truth? And he once again says, I find no fault at all in this man. We'll go back to Luke chapter 23. Luke 23, verse 13. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, You have brought this man unto me as one that perverteth the people, and behold, I, having examined him before you, have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof you accuse him. I don't believe you. There's nothing wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong. There's no cause to put him to death at all. No, nor yet Herod. He agrees with me. For I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. Verse 17, for of necessity he must release one of them at the feast. So once again he says to them, we've judged him, we've assessed him, and he is not guilty. He can go free. And by the way, I'm going to use my power that you guys have a tradition that during the Passover we get to release one prisoner. And I choose Jesus. And they said, give us Barabbas. And they said, away with this man, release unto us Barabbas. So Barabbas was in jail for insurrection and for murder. So he was the one who had actually killed people and had actually stirred the people up against the Romans. And they said, we want him. So Pilate, verse 20, willing to release Jesus, spake unto them, but they said, crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, why, what evil hath he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and the chief priests prevailed. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. And he released unto them him that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired, but he delivered Jesus to their will. The very man who actually did the things that the Romans didn't want, Jesus took his place as well. The thing that they said, okay, the Romans are going to find issue with this, that he is trying to gather a nation together under his name as a king, and that will be sedition against the Romans. Jesus took that man's place. Barabbas was released instead of Jesus. So once again, he fulfills the required law that someone should die for the wrong that was done. And as we see, they cried out even more. We'll go over to Matthew 27. Just a few verses here. Matthew 27, verse 19. This happens a little bit before they released Barabbas, but I just wanted to point this out. When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, have thou nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. We have another person in amongst all these others who says, this man is just. He is not guilty. He doesn't deserve to die. And we don't know what the dreams were, but she obviously had some things that happened in the night that she was really bothered about. And then she had a day where she was seeing all this stuff unfold, and she knew in herself, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. Don't have anything to do with him. And Pilate sees it unfold. That as he pleads with the Pharisees multiple times and says, this man should not die. I see no cause to kill him. They hated me without a cause. He was powerless to stop it. And down in verse 24, when Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. I tried. The innocent blood is not on my hands. This is on you. A riot was stirring because the Pharisees had worked the people into a frenzy. And what does God say is an abomination? He that soweth discord among brethren. The strife, the contention, the twisting, hate and anger in the very people that Jesus healed and delivered and tried to teach hope. The Pharisees had caused discord. that they all of a sudden were caught up in the momentum of everyone saying, "This man must die," and they were powerless to cry against it. The discord had been sown, that the people's minds had been turned against the power of the living God in amongst them. I was going to go through several other figures that we see throughout this, but I'll just mention them just to wrap up. We have Simon the Cyrenian, who was compelled to carry Jesus' cross. That means the Romans went, "You, pick that up." He was there for the feast. We don't know anything about him, but he was there visiting from another region, and he witnesses all this stuff happening. We don't know what he thought about it. We don't know whether he agreed about it, but all of a sudden he finds himself in amongst it, carrying the cross for the man who is, we assume that Jesus was so weak that he was dropping it, that he was, as he was forced to carry his cross, he couldn't do it anymore because of what they had already done to him. The crown of thorns, the beating, the cutting into his flesh, all of those things. Simon walked alongside this man carrying his cross and wondering, why is this happening? We don't know how much he knew about it, but if he did know, he would be thinking, why is this happening? This man doesn't deserve to die. We read about Jesus in John 19, verse 25 to 27. He's on the cross. He is dying. He's breathing his last. And what does he do? He looks out for his mum. He looks out for the natural requirements of those that he's leaving behind. And he says, "Mother, behold your son." And then she says to John, "Behold thy mother." He says, "I want you to look after her. I want to make sure she's okay. I'm rising from the dead in 3 days, but after that I'm going to be going. And in this moment, you guys don't believe it. As much as I've preached about it, as much as I've prophesied about it, you don't believe it because this is all unfathomable. This is all out of your understanding. You are thinking, why is this happening? Why don't you stop it? Why don't you let it be another way?" But he shows the compassion that he has for his mother and for John to say, "I want you to look after her." And Mary Magdalene is there as well. And she's the one that probably believed the most, possibly, because she was there on the third day, waiting for him. She perhaps had it in her mind that she wasn't still quite convinced because she was bringing the herbs to be able to prepare his body properly because they didn't have time. But she was there, and she was overcome with joy when she realized that he had risen from the dead. But she's watching this unfold, this man who changed her life, and thinking, why is this happening? We also read of Joseph of Arimathea, who was another disciple of Jesus, a rich man, and he begged for the body of Jesus. And Nicodemus, the Pharisee, who came to Jesus by night, helped him. The two of them, at great cost to themselves socially, to be aligned with this man who everyone was calling for his blood. They gathered his body and they buried him, fulfilling the scripture that he would be buried with the rich. That Joseph of Arimathea, he had a family tomb that no one was in there, and he said he can go in there, and we go from them. So just to wrap up, I had a few other scriptures to go through, but as we don't have any new people today, I don't really need to hit on the things that are really happen and what need to be achieved. But what I was going to talk about is that the necessity to be baptized by full immersion, to be buried with Christ, to rise again with new life, and that new life comes from the Holy Spirit. And you know that you've received that new Spirit because you speak in tongues. But just to wrap it up, what I really wanted to talk about, that these people, Judas, Pilate, Herod, Simon, Mary, John, and the other disciples, Joseph and Nicodemus, we don't know what was going through their minds, but they probably thought, this is wrong. Pilate thought that. This is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. It's not meant to go this way. Why doesn't Jesus do something? Many people even, they threw that in his face. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. Show us the miracles. But Jesus willingly submitted himself to all these horrors and all this violence, knowing what it would achieve at the end. He was allowing the will of his Father to unfold, that in this path of they thinking they get what they wanted, that the Pharisees, they demonstrated that they got what they wanted by doing the things that God hates. God forgave them, and God made a way to redeem us all. Jesus, in this whole process, he fulfilled the law and prophecy in righteousness, in honesty, and purity where they couldn't. They achieved their goal through deceit, corruption, lies, and murder. They did everything the way that God hated it, and God said, through this process, I will cover all of that. And this shows you why this needs to happen, because you will all be driven by these motives. In your nature, you are told something that you don't like and you hate it, you fight against it. Said, I'm going to free you from that by Jesus doing the right thing the whole way through. That even though he was killed like a criminal, he didn't behave like one at all. And he fulfilled Scripture the whole way through as he was cruelly treated by these people. So when we're about to remember the crucifixion, I want to encourage us to think about, how did we perceive the gospel? At some point we probably hated it. Now, whether that was for a moment or whether that was just in the back of your mind, you didn't like someone telling you that you'd done the wrong thing. But at one point, something cut through. Something made a difference. Something opened your eyes. Like Pilate, who went, I don't want this to happen, but I can't do anything. We were powerless to stop it. All of a sudden, something cuts through and shows us that we have done the wrong thing and we need to make it right, and that we need to be redeemed. But we had to want the change. We had to want to take on what Jesus had achieved for us and to die to our old way of life and be risen again. To be forgiven of betraying innocent blood to get what we wanted. Because that's what we were doing. We were living our lives to serve ourselves. We were betraying what God had given us opportunity to take on and saying, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want a new life. I don't want to be a Christian. I want to be who I am. But at some point, when we see the cross, when we see the crucifixion, and we see the way that people conducted themselves, we see that Jesus conducted himself perfectly. And he says, I want you to have this. And that's what I was going to read. I was going to talk about how in Romans chapter 5, verse 6, it actually talks about when we had no strength, God loved us. It's a fantastic scripture. Where is it? Yeah, I think it's in there. And that he reconciled and saved us. So just in closing, that we've been reconciled to God through the death of his Son, who met the violence and hate and lies with obedience, humility, and compassion. Let's remember that.